Okay, that's it. We're ready to go. What we're going to paint today, by request, is a landscape. And we're going to paint this, and that is Friary Park in Kerry. It's from a photograph, which is not the ideal way of painting. I must stress this. The more painting that you can do, actually standing at the view itself and painting, the better. And really, because painting photographs, they constrict you. There's a whole load of the world out here and above and below that you can see if you're standing there that you can't. It's already framed. It's already nicely framed by a photographer. And so that takes away some of your power, you know, to choose which part. We can only choose from this outside perimeter inwards, whereas there's an awful lot of stuff outside that you might have wanted to have. But the photographer's chosen that thing. We've no choice in the current situation but to do our landscapes like this, but it's still good practice. Normally, I put down a standard burnt umber wash, and I'll show you the palette now. Titanium white, cadmium yellow, pale hue, permanent rose, cobalt blue, burnt umber, let's get it into the light, burnt umber, and ivory black. Now, in printing, they're called process colors. So these are the nearest colors in commonly available paints from Winsor & Newton that I can find that behave like the printer's colors, in the sense that you can get the whole gamut, the whole range of colors from these, and plus white. Obviously, with printing, the white is from the paper. Burnt umber for drawing and doing a wash usually, and there is a process black for the printers as well. So it's a simple palette. All the colors are about as far away from each other as you can get. Now, the palette does have its limitations, but I mean, other than that, it really does sort of get you close to where you want to go in most circumstances. Okay, and you know, there's no sort of how would you call it, ambiguity between the colors. Whereas if you had a traditionalist palette, you'd have sap green. Well, you can make a sap green, can't you? You can make a green out of the blue and the yellow. Okay, so that's the reason for this palette. And now, so today I would normally do a wash with burnt umber, but this week I've just been doing something different. And the previous 2 days I used permanent rose, because you can use any color for your wash as long as it's not white or black, because they will just ruin your painting. If you put a whole load of white there, you'll just get a pastel kind of gray mess when you paint your picture. We can use any of the other colors. Normally I use that. Yesterday and the day before I used that. And today I'm going to use a mixture of those two, just to provide a warm undertone to this painting. So let me get my brush. And to make that, I'm just going to use the terps. I'm using terps. I'd recommend probably to use zested, even though it's more expensive. It's less volatile and harsh on your health. Okay, but I'm using, because I haven't got any zested left. And Evans isn't open. All right, so here we go. I'm going to just put some terps there, get some red and yellow. I mixed up a kind of a warm, an orangey kind of tone. About the consistency of milk. Okay, right, okay. So here we are, here's my canvas, and I'm just going to put the wash all over this. This is what you would do even if you're out in the field painting, same thing. You don't have to be an obsessive completist about the whole thing to just get it down. This is only a preparatory move technique. Okay. So now we have our canvas prepared. What have we done? Excuse me. What have we done? Well, we've actually broken in the canvas. That's one thing that's good about that. It's okay. Nobody to come in. We've broken into canvas. We've set the tone of the canvas more like our palette. so it's easier to judge tone. We've provided a kind of a base from which we can we get what's called happy accidents, unintended consequences. So this orange showing through where we don't put down very much paint, for example, and it makes paintings look more, how would you say, profound, so less superficial. Paintings that are done directly on white have a tendency, if the painter doesn't quite know what they're doing, to look superficial somehow, like skies. You can see the white of the canvas or paper reflecting through the sky. And that's all right in watercolor, that's what you want, but not in oils. So we've tamped that down. We've tamped that bright white canvas down. And now I'm going to do a bit of drawing. And I think I'll do the drawing in the same kind of mix as well. So I'm just going to use the yellow and the red again. I don't need to show you. So, look, I mean, that's about halfway, isn't it? We have to measure. If I measure this way, my brush just hits the palette. So I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to measure that there to there. We'll just keep the composition that the photographer gave us. 1, 2. So the top of the lawn is about halfway, maybe just slightly under. So it's going to put that in. That's our line there. What's down the center here? Is that down the center, the side of the tree? Let's have a look. We can measure it. And this is what you would be doing if you were standing there. It's not at the center. It's slightly off the center. The center is probably more like that. Yeah. So we know if we put a center line down there, better check that, sorry, better check if that's the center actually of this canvas. Bit off to the right. There's our center line. We know that the tree is probably coming to about there. It's coming to near the top. I don't want it to go so near the top. I'm going to bring that down a wee bit. Okay. We've got this diagonal here. It's like the Christmas tree, so cut in half there. So we can put that there like that, can't we? A bit more over maybe. Something like that. Very rough. We're not talking geometry here. Okay, so we've got this, and we've got a diagonal coming down here, ending about there. So now we've got 2 points, haven't we? Well, we've got the bottom of the lawn before it gets to the river, and it comes down in a kind of a curve. 1, 2. Yeah, that goes to halfway, and then curves around there like that. Let's get that tree in now that we know where we want. Okay. Comes down slightly into the lawn. Okay, and remember, like you have to treat this as if you're actually outside and work fast, because things happen when you're outside, and you realize you've forgotten a rag, and then you have to go around looking for something to use as a rag. Well, especially if you're like me, anyway. I always tend to forget something, as you know, and I'm going to put that down there. So you've got to work quickly. Okay, that's the point. And make it brushy and not start getting in everything dead accurate. It's not helpful, and it doesn't make for a great painting, I don't think, because people say, well, yeah, I like that photo. I like the photo better than your painting. Thanks. There. See, look, an absolute reflection has to be got in now. You have to know that it's there now, that reflects down into the river like that. Dark runs all the way across as the lawn falls into the river. Steeple. That must be the friary, the eponymous friary. There. That's all dark there, really, isn't it? And what's that, kind of a jetty thing? Let's have a look, because if we were there, we could step closer, couldn't we? See what it is. Walk down to the water's edge. Oh yeah, look at what's happening there. We're still drawing. So we're just kind of putting in the indicators of how we might sort of approach this. Dark there, dark there. We've got our reflection there, haven't we? We've got our reflection there. Oh yes, I was talking about reflections, wasn't I? That the reflection, you need to get them in now, because, and you need to not forget that they're there, because I do often see people painting and then they do a reflection, all right, but it's not in the right place. And it throws the whole thing off. It becomes wrong, I suppose. Right, so that is, oh yeah, I was here, wasn't I? So we've got stuff there. There's a dark up above the lawn just there. That's a kind of a hedge. There's a little bit of paraphernalia there, which we're not going to worry too much about. There's that sort of jetty, I'm calling it. I'm not sure what it is, but that comes there, but not to the middle. And then it's reflected. And then there's a dark here, and that's all that stuff reflected as well. Okay, but that dark comes down there like that. Right, so that's a kind of a drawing. We don't really need much more than that. It's just really an indication in very sort of, well, I mean, you can't do an accurate drawing with a brush like that. That's I think it's a number 6. But that's the kind of drawing. Now, another thing that I like to do these days is what's called a notan, especially when I'm doing landscapes, because I believe it helps. It's kind of like in between a drawing and an underpainting. It's not quite an underpainting, but it's more than a drawing. And it's a tonal representation of what you're looking at. It really helps when you're designing your painting. We don't actually need to design this very much because, oh, sorry, we've got the design. We've already got the design because the photographer gave it to us. All right, so I'm going to do this as a notan. So I'm actually going to go to burnt umber for this, okay? Just going to get a bit of burnt umber, make it a little bit washy, but not too washy. And I'm going to put in the parts that are sort of dark. Okay. That's dark all along there. The tree is kind of a darkish feature. Not accurate sort of representations. This is all kind of dark. It's very kind of washy sort of mix of just burnt umber. Make sure the reflection, make sure it corresponds, it agrees with the one above. And it's like conjugating verbs, isn't it? And here we go. And a dark there. And then that's kind of, let's put that in as a dark because that'll help us remember where we are. And then by the tower, the spire of that. All right, that's our notan. Okay. So now we have our drawing. No details. It's just an idea of where we are on our painting. I can see that here is too big. So in fact, that can come over a wee bit. See that there? That would be a negative space. That kind of rectangle, or whatever you call it, sort of, and that's a negative space. And that is as important as the objects that you're painting. Okay. And similarly, we have this, the sky here, so that can come over here like that. Now, I'm going to just tamp it down a little bit. I don't want it to affect too much what I put over this. All right. So now I'm going to make up. I'm going to make up some of the really darks. So it's really quite dark up there. It's dark in some of those trees there, and dark here and here, down here. So I'm going to actually make up a pretty dark. But I think this time I'm just going to use pure burnt umber. Okay, so that tree there coming down into there. That's pretty dark there. That's darker than the tree above it. The water seems to have darkened. Dark. You don't have to be super accurate with these things just yet, because you can change later. Painting, as I keep saying, is all about sort of making a mark and then adjusting it. Okay, so that's kind of dark there as well. All right. Let us put in some of that lawn, a beautifully kept lawn. I'm just going to make a change my camera. Going to make a green for that. So I'm just going to take some yellow, some blue. That makes a very bright kind of green. Put a bit of oil into it just to help it slide. I'm just going to actually do that and put that in first. Change, Kevin. I'm not, actually, do you know what? I should do this. A touch of red, just to make it a little bit more natural. Yeah. Yes, that's better. Okay. I'm just going to put the whole thing across there. Coming down there. There. Okay. You can see it sort of coming down into there a little bit. I'm going to darken that green now. Putting a bit of blue and red into it. I'm just going to block in that bit there. Okay. And just turn that a little bit green there. Okay, I'm going to do some of that, that tree off to the left. I can do a bit more on that. Just going to cover that area as much as I can. I'm not going to be a completist about that, because I don't want it to be a great big sort of mass that's not going to accept any sort of changes afterwards. That's a nice dark down there. Okay, let's put in some trees there. And this this is the blocking in stage, okay? This This defines the painting in general terms, and then the details are put in afterwards. In fact, I think this is the most important stage, because it could all go horribly sort of wrong here. Okay, so that goes on there. Okay, I'm going to make that tree there sort of brighter and greener than the surrounding foliage. Just a mass. I'm massing that in. That's roughly similar there. I'll just put that there. Okay. Now, let's just should do that there as well. That corresponds with that. That's a reflection of that. Goes down there like that. A stroke there. The river bank. It's a bit darker there. And it goes kind of dark, quite dark there. Okay. At this point, the midges are starting to get at you. You've got to sort of work quickly. And I'm going to put in the sky. White and blue. A lot of white, a little bit of blue. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in as well, just to help it move. And I'm just going to mass that in. I suppose at some stage very soon I have to put that church in, aren't I? Okay. Massed in the paint, the sky color around these bits, and just kind of I'm just pushing it in where I kind of want to shape those trees. That's the beauty of oils, that you kind of shape with the color that's around. You know, so I massed that in, and then I get or I say, let's do it over here. I massed in that tree, and then when I come to paint the sky, that's when you get the tree shape. It's not necessarily when you paint that part that you start making the tree shape. You do in a very general terms. The real tree shape is just sort of done like that. Okay. The sky reflects just a little darker in the water. The tendency is for water to reflect the sky a little bit darker. Okay. Okay, so we got that there. Okay. Not going to do anything with that water yet. So now we have water reflecting sky. That goes in there like that. Into the riverbank. Into the riverbank. Now I suppose we should really get that that church in, since it seems to be a feature. I'm not going to paint it that sort of dull grey that it is. You know, our job as artists, I think, is to you know, make something of what we're looking at. So I'm going to make a bit of an orangey color. I'm not going to change the cameras because I keep forgetting to change it back. So I'm going to make a yellow, permanent rose, a little bit of blue and white. Okay, just a little bit more blue there. And you get a kind of an orangey grey, which is actually more or less what is there in the first place. Put that in there. And then the church comes in through the trees here. Okay, so that's it. And then through it, there's a kind of there's a tree growing up through it here anyway, and also a tree behind it. Now the trees behind, I'm actually going to sort of put them into the background using what they call aerial perspective. So I'm going to get the green that I use for the trees, and I'm going to sort of mix white into it, or in fact, mix some of the sky color into it, because that's more what is actually going on. See, I've mixed white into the tree. Put that down and send that tree into the background. And I might do something similar with some of the trees here. Because you've got to give, like a photograph seems to sort of give a good sense of perspective, you know, a truthful, you know, really accurate rendition of reality. But painting, it's kind of a little bit harder. I think, and in painting, you have to sort of use devices, you know, to tell the viewer that there's something going on, you know, that things are receding into the distance. Now, I used a phrase there, aerial perspective. If you don't know what that means, it just means that there's a huge body of air between us and the very far distance. And a way to actually represent that is send it into the distance by putting, if you've got still got your sky mix up, you put that into whatever color that your painting is, and that makes it look as if it's receding. I'm going to put in a couple of details here. There's a couple of darks that would be worth going in. Okay, I'm going to put that across there. That's kind of the hedge that's there. There's some real sort of darks in the trees there, all kind of a fairly random sort of mixes. There's a dark across the top of the lawn. Okay. There's a dark down by the side of the spire. We're just putting in dabs. We're not sort of getting obsessive about how we're painting those dabs, just putting in dabs. Back to the trees. Tree there. I'm going to shape well, I'm going to put a light down by the side of the tower. Put my finger there just to rest my. Wasn't very bright. Let's try it again. Load the brush. Put it down there like that. And then there's a couple of lights on the other part of the ruined cathedral there. Cathedral, anyway. A light there. I'm going to shape that that castle. It's become a cathedral, become a castle. I'm going to just shape that church. There, and I can shape it down here as well, just by putting. All this is impressions. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's do whatever this stuff is here, jetty or whatever. Same as the church, really. It's a kind of a light that's the same as the church. It's catching the light, in fact, catching the light here, and it's being reflected here, and it's kind of here a bit as well. And then there are some darks here. I'm not quite sure what that is. It kind of looks as if it's stonework or something. But all they are shapes and tones. Okay. And we're building on this sort of rough work that we did, this blocking in. All we're doing is painting into it and sticking details in. Okay, so. Oh, look, here's a nice. Okay, so we can create some of this. See this, you know, grass reeds that are there. We can just sort of push them in. We're pushing the paint in. We're not being specific. I'm going to go back to my larger brush, if you don't mind. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to that later now, but just going to push it in a couple of places. There. Okay. Right, so let's put some subtleties in. This one over here. There are some sort of subtles. You can see them there, but they're kind of, they're grayish, they're bluish sort of green, but dark. Okay, so but they're not being specific now, just let's put some stuff in on the lawn. Some details, some shadows, in fact. Some stuff going on over here. It's either morning or evening, isn't it? With long shadows. Trees, 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 trees. Let's and that is, I'm not sure whether I mentioned it, when you, to make a natural green, you mix the yellow and the red, and then you put some red into it. That's how to make a natural green. Now there's some very bright parts of that lawn further away from us, and even close here as well. So I'm actually going to sort of put some white into it, put some white and some yellow, and mark them in. Lighter and yellower. Okay. Down here. And just make sure you kind of leave some of that orange showing through. It helps in a painting. I'm going to sort of get in some darks on that tree there, because even though it's kind of like in the midfield, isn't it? But it's not right up close, so it's not going to be a really dark that I'm putting down there. There. On this side, it's all sort of dark, the dark interior of the tree. Okay. Although it is quite dark here. We're just putting in dabs. And they're random, really, because, you know, trees are random, aren't they? There we go. Okay, anything down here? Yes, that's kind of needs a bit of description there. Reflection. It's reflecting. Yeah, that's a kind of a bluey sort of tone there. Hue, I should say, rather than tone. Right, and then a nice sort of light coming down here. Okay. In fact, that's here as well. Okay. Now I'm going to put in some couple of orangey sort of parts, just to keep it looking more natural. There's a lot of red in life, in nature. Especially in Ireland, you know, because it's so lush. Just looking through that tree there. Now, more sky. I'm going to do more sky. Where's my filbert? So I'm going to make it more interesting. Just make sure that there's sort of tonal variation, because Ireland is, you know, we're known for our weather. So let's just put in some indications that we have clouds, best clouds in Europe. And then we can start pushing in sort of to shape our tree. That's how you paint trees, and that's how you paint flowers as well. You know, you don't paint the petals. You sculpt the petals. Okay, into there. That's our tree shape. You know, we can come in here a little bit. Now, push that into there. Join that up. And the most important thing in a painting anyway is tone. It's not color. If you get the tones sort of right, it will still be the painting that you want it to be. People get obsessed with color and getting the right paint for the right job, and really should be just concentrating on how the shade and how dark things are. I'm going to make the sky a bit more interesting by putting a bit of pink into it. The skies tend to get lighter as they come down towards the horizon, so I'm going to sort of push in there, push in there, push that away from the spire actually there, bring that in. You can go on for like an hours with skies, adding in little bits, and the skies are changing. That's the really sort of interesting thing about painting outdoors, and especially in Ireland. The light changes so fast, and then you kind of get to a sky that you're happy with, and the light changes, but you really end up kind of making your own sky to give it the feeling that you want to give it. I'm going to go lighter in places now. Who hasn't been to a scene like this? Even a kind of a yellow ochre-y sort of I look at the way other painters paint skies as well. There's some beautiful renditions. They must have spent a long time painting them, yeah. People have their own skies. You know, they've kind of like their style of sky. You know, the biggest example is Paul Henry, isn't it? Now, very important that this reflects in here. Okay, so we're going to do the same kind of thing in here. We're not going to sort of overdo it. Give it a bit of variation. Interest value. Because that's the thing about, you know, us as painters, we can sort of, we can make the thing look whatever the bloody hell we like. It doesn't have to be what is actually there. We can add interest. And that's in terms of color, in terms of texture, all sorts of things. Messing with reality. We have all this opportunity. Now, I'm going to do something, actually I'm going to do something with this. It's looking a little bit forlorn there, okay? So, I'm going to make up a dark green. Just shove that in there like that, make sure. Bit of tonal variation, let it sort of, let some things show through. This too. That can come down further. And that can come out there. Okay. I'm going to add in some light parts down here because the light is on the side of that tree there. And similarly, there will be some sort of reflection of it down here. Let's put in some darks here. We're bouncing around all over the place in our painting now because that's what you do with an alla prima painting. You don't concentrate on one area and then sort of move on, finish it and then move on to the next. You move around, try and get it all in one go. as near to one go as you can. Okay, there, like that. I can push that around. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, now back to the water. Let's see if I can sort of slightly sort of bring some things down into the water there. And even here, soften that. Now it softens in two ways. There's two things going on. There's a vertical reflection going on, and there's also horizontal reflections in the water. So let's put in some horizontal ones. So they'll be sort of reflecting the sky. So it's kind of your sky color. You can sort of put in little. And that kind of makes it look like water. You might not actually see them there very well, but it helps. It helps to sort of explain to the viewer that this is water we're looking at there. Look, you can put in those little sort of bits there. And there. Push. You're pushing the paint around. You're kind of bringing the water in, and you're also at the same time bringing the reflection out. There's some activity going on here that I'm not really sure what it is because it's too far away. So they're just shapes. You put them in there like that. Right, some other activity going on down here, which is worthwhile putting in. So just do random sort of strokes and flicks. I'll show you something else in a minute. Let's see if we can get it to work. You can even use the edge of or the end of your brush just to that's called sgraffito in Italian. Not that my Italian is worth anything, but you can sort of do things like that to give an impression of grass and stuff like that. We can actually do the same thing in here as well. Don't overdo it, I think is the use anything at your disposal, really. If you had a fork, you know, some people I've seen artists sort of taking all sorts of things with them into the field, you know, to get the result that they wanted. It's quite funny the what do you call it, the improvisation that goes on. We're going to lighten that here along here because I kind of like a pool of light. I like there to be an area where the light is pooling, the light is strongest. Move that across there like that. Let's go back to the sky. All sorts of things going on now around there. I don't like the way that tree forms a, how do you say, it forms a tangent with that church. So I don't like that, so I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to bring the church up. So that's it. Oh, and now is the time. This, I meant this at the time that I remarked to myself that I should actually explain something here, but about tangents. You try never to have something, say for instance, there was a right big building next to that tree. You wouldn't have the building sort of at the same level coming down. You'd do something, you'd either bring the building up or you'd bring the tree up and bring the building down a little bit, so that they didn't have this kind of, you know, this they call it a tangent. Tangents are kind of horrible in paintings. And it's like the wedding photograph, isn't it? Where the wedding photographer takes a photograph and there's a tree growing out of somebody's head. You want the tree to be off to the side somehow. All right. This tree that I'm dealing with here. That's the other thing, is that I just meant to push that down so that we can see the tree a little bit better. Sculpt that tree and make that lit part a little bit sort of, the lit part of the church on the side, a little bit sort of more obvious. And I want to make that a little bit sort of narrower as well. So I'm going to push it, I'm going to use that tone, the church in shadow, to push that over a little bit. Push that, make that lit part a bit sort of thinner. And from now on, it's only little sort of details you want. You're just putting in sort of little touches. Not being specific. Of course, there's something here as well that I should do. I missed. Something there. Something there. Ooh, said he, exclaiming in a very sort of strange manner. This bit here is light. I'm going to do something with that. You can do quite big strokes, I think. Everything doesn't have to be sort of minimal and as it is in nature. And use paint. Don't stint on the paint. Just painting the sky that I can see sort of just a little bit of it behind the tree. You don't want to do too much of that, really. And I think I might sort of put in some really bright bits of cloud, because that would be sort of it's nice. Sometimes I do it gratuitously as well. I put great gobs of paint in. Yeah, they're almost like Lucian Freud or something. And if you want to sell a painting, somebody told me this once. Oh God, yeah, that's true. So you paint a warm painting. So you've got to know on your palette how to make warm colors out of what you have. Put some of that in here as well, but not specifically. Especially up here where it's lighter. Should I put in the fact that there's sort of I'm in great danger of bollocksing that up if I start doing that. Okay. Not sure how much this will reflect up. I'm going to unmute you all. Actually, hang on, let me unmute you. Unmute all. You're all unmuted.
It's lovely.
Beautiful. I love your sky and river.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Really gorgeous.
Okay, and
Yeah.
just the whole point is to make it look as if you were there and not that you painted from a photograph. It's a big mistake people make, is just to try and go down the road of looking of having it exactly the same as that photograph. I'm just trying to sort of see about the texture. You can see sort of in the sky. Let's have a look.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's quite a lot of paint on
the sky.
Yeah.
Sky is amazing.
Sky's beautiful.
And then if you look at that, I think comparatively,
it's dull.
It's dull.
It's dull.
That's perfectly described.
Yeah.
Photographs.
Quite flat.
Photographs can be perfectly representative, but dull. Yeah. And it's only when photographers start messing with filters and everything like that that things become alive. Unless it's an absolutely extraordinary, beautiful day and the scene is just lit itself.
Yeah.
Like the time I was in Roussillon, where I was down in where they mine for the ochre, and it was an evening light, and it was just extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. But that was an extraordinary place in an extraordinary time of day with the light. And even I could take a good photograph, and I'm a really terrible photographer with my phone. So there you go. That's how I approach
Beautiful.
it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So keep it sort of.
Lovely.
Let me change the gallery. Now I can see all of you. Good.
That was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
I liked how you brought in the kind of the feeling of warmth of heat in the picture.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, part of that comes from the way you start, and you could get a bit of that with the burnt umber, but to paint an orange behind it, an orange behind green, it somehow sets so because mostly you're covering it up, but when you let it come through, it looks as if light is hitting it, or there's something warm there. And
Yeah, you had little specks coming through.
People respond to warmth.
Yes.
And so even in your shadows, if you paint dark shadows around things, try not to use black, and try to use cool darks. You know, so for example, you can use black to punch up your shadow a little bit, but so you make your shadow sort of you mix blue and red. And a little bit of yellow to kind of not make it sort of a purple. But I mean, your shadows can be purples and cool greens and cool reds and blues and things like that. So that's what the Impressionists were so good at. They discovered that you don't really need to use black and burnt umber to make these really deep, dark shadows. And people sort of read them as dark even though they're not that dark. And
Why cool shadows, Kevin, and not warm ones?
you can have warm shadows. Imagine if you were sitting by a fire and you were only lit by the December day outside. The shadows would be warm and the lit parts would be cool. So it's not necessarily so. But
I get you. I get you.
Yeah, but much of the time, if you're painting outside, everything's been lit by the sun. Sun's warm. So in order to make everything look, that's a trick of painting. In order to make things look warm, you put something cool next to it.
So the cool.
It's about contrast. So in order to make something look dark, you put something light next, or you make something light, you put something dark next to it. They're like rules of thumb